Good afternoon, one and all. I welcome you all to Ganesh AS Academy. In today's session, we'll be seeing environment-based current affairs for the month of December. Here, in our discussion for today, we'll be seeing climate change topic. Okay, so we are going to see two important news regarding climate change. Okay, one is this 28th conference of parties to UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. What are all the key outcomes of this particular convention? This will be handling, and then we'll get into the details of climate change performance index that was recently released for the year 2024. Okay, so it is climate change performance index for 2024 which has been recently released. Okay, so that will compare with the previous year's performance and all the other details we'll be understanding. So now let us get into the details of the 28th conference of parties and its outcomes. So COP28 to UNFCCC. Recently the 28th conference of parties to UNFCCC was held in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. We all know that. And then what is this UNFCCC? That we have to understand first and then get into the details of the recent events. So UNFCCC was signed in 1992, and where was it signed? At United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, and this UNCED is also called as Earth Summit or Rio Summit, or it is also called as Rio Conference. It is because it happened in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, next, what is this conference of parties? We are saying COP28. Okay, so what is this COP? COP is Conference of Parties, and what is the role of this Conference of Parties under UNFCCC? This we have to understand. So the Article 7.2 of this convention defines this Conference of Parties as the supreme body of the convention, and it is the highest decision making authority of the convention also. So these Conference of Parties, which will be happening every year, is the supreme body of the convention, and it is also the decision making authority of this particular convention, that is UNFCCC. Okay, and then the climate change processes revolves around the annual sessions of this Conference of Parties only. Okay, so all the climate change related decisions will be taken during these Conference of Parties. Okay, so this is what we need to understand at the background. Now let us understand the important outcomes of this particular Conference of Parties which held in Dubai. Okay, so the first outcome that we are going to discuss is loss and damage fund. What is this loss and damage fund? This COP 28 member countries, that is those member countries who are the members of the UNFCCC convention. Okay, so these countries reached an agreement to operationalize a fund called as loss and damage fund. Okay, and then what is the aim of this fund? They have created a fund, and what is the aim of this fund? It is to compensate countries with climate change impacts, who are grappling with climate change impacts. Okay, and these countries are actually the most vulnerable ones, the most vulnerable countries to climate change impacts. Okay, so just to compensate these countries, this fund has been created, and then World Bank will be the interim host of this loss and damage fund for next 4 years. Okay, and then the fund is aligning with UNFCCC and Paris Agreement. We all know that Paris Agreement happened in the year 2015. Okay, so this is what we need to understand. What else do we have to know about this loss and damage fund? Here, all developing countries are eligible to apply for this fund. Important. And every country, be it developed or developing country, is invited to contribute voluntarily. Okay, so now they have made it voluntarily. Already they have discussed that it should be made mandatory, but then developed countries said that If it is made mandatory, then it would not be possible for us. Okay, so now it has been made voluntary, so every other country, be it developed or developing country, they can contribute it, they can contribute to it voluntarily, and then all developing countries are eligible to apply for the fund, to access the fund. Okay, and a specific percentage is earmarked for least developed countries and small island developing countries. This is also there. Okay, a specific part of this fund will be earmarked for least developed countries and those island, small island developing countries. Okay, and then it has been agreed that the fund should have at least 100 billion US dollars in the fund by the year 2030. Okay, so this is what we need to understand about this loss and damage fund which was created. Next is global stock take. What is this global stock take? You might have come across this term in current affairs, in your news articles. But what is this global stock take? Let us understand. It is a process for the countries to see whether they are collectively making progress towards meeting the global goals of the Paris Agreement. In Paris Agreement, goals were made, and here the countries are going to assess themselves whether they are in the right path towards achieving the goal or not. That process is called as global stock take. Okay, how much they have achieved, this they are going to assess, and that process is called as global stock take. And as per the Paris Agreement of 2015, it was decided that the countries would assess their progress for the first time in the year 2023, this year, and then every 5 years once. Okay, so after this, every 5 years once, global stock take will be done. That is, countries assessing their progress towards achieving the Paris Agreement goal. Okay, and then the fifth iteration of global stock take text was released in this COP 28 of UNFCCC, and it was adopted without objection. But then there are many other details to it which we will understand in the upcoming slides. Okay, there are few countries who did not completely agree to the text of global stock take, the fifth iteration text. Okay, let us understand all those details one by one. So the text proposes 8 steps to keep the global temperature rise within the ambit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This was the goal set by Paris Agreement, which we already know. Okay, so it proposes 8 steps. These 8 steps we must have to understand one by one. Before getting into the details of what those 8 steps are, now let us understand a particular concept called as unabated coal. So in many of the drafts and the text that has been released in the COP 28, this particular term unabated coal is repeatedly used. So we must have to understand what this unabated coal is. Okay, and what is this unabated coal power generation? Okay, so unabated coal power generation refers to the use of coal that isn't mitigated with technologies to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. They are using coal, but then they are not using the mitigation technologies to reduce carbon dioxide emission. That type of coal usage is known as unabated coal usage. Okay, so unabated means the power plant has not invested in abating technology like carbon capture, utilization and storage technology. This is one famous technology that is used for carbon capture, utilization and storage. Okay, we'll discuss about this in the upcoming slides. So the purpose of the abatement is to reduce carbon dioxide emissions to defined levels. But to achieve this, there must be additional technological investments. Okay, so additional technology investments are necessary to achieve this goal. But in the absence of such measures, in the absence of such investments, then coal power generation should cease. So it is like an agreement. Okay, so this regulatory approach puts the onus on the power plant owners and operators. So it is solely the responsibilities of the power plant owners and the operators to either fit these technologies, that is CCS technology, also called as carbon capture, utilization, storage technology, or they should retire from the power plant. Okay, so these are the two options that is given to them. Either use the technology to reduce carbon dioxide emission or cease to be a power plant owner. Okay, so this is what is being done. So that is unabated coal, okay, where mitigation technologies are not used. Next, there are two important technologies that we must have to discuss with respect to this unabated coal. One is that CCS, which we discussed in the previous slide, and then CDR. What are they? So the draft decisions taken at COP28 have recommended the abatement and removal of carbon emissions using two technologies. One is carbon capture and storage, another is carbon dioxide removal technologies. Both are actually interrelated, but let us understand that distinctly. So unabated fossil fuels mean combustion of these fuels without using CCS technologies, which we already know. Okay, these technologies are used to capture their emissions. So here the draft decision text points to a need to phase out such unabated fossil fuels. So the text or the draft focuses on phasing out such unabated fossil fuels. This is what we need to understand in a broader sense. So now let us get into the details of what this carbon capture and storage is. Okay. So carbon capture and storage, it refers to technologies that can capture carbon dioxide at a source of the emission before it is released into the atmosphere. So they are going to capture the carbon dioxide at its source itself before it is released into the atmosphere. And then these sources include fossil fuel industry, where they use coal, oil and gas for combustion, and then also other industrial processes like steel and cement production. So fossil fuel, steel and cement production, all these are the sources. Okay, so from here directly before letting the carbon dioxide into atmosphere, it will be captured. So capturing will happen here and then it will be transported. So this is the capturing phase. Next, it is transported through pipes. Okay, transport through pipes and other ships, and then it is stored underground. Storage. So that is capture and storage, carbon capture and storage. And here yet another process is involved, or yet another step is involved, where they are going to utilize the stored carbon dioxide either from here or from here. Either way, the carbon dioxide that is being transported or the carbon dioxide that is stored, it can be utilized. Okay, so here utilization happens. And this carbon dioxide can be utilized for many industrial purposes, in many chemical processes and in many biological processes, it can be used. Okay, so this is carbon capture and storage technology. Next is carbon dioxide removal. What is this carbon dioxide removal? CDR takes the form of both natural means like afforestation or reforestation. So this carbon dioxide removal process can be both afforestation or reforestation technology, or it can be other man-made technologies. So it can be natural or man-made. Okay, man-made technologies like direct air capture, where machines mimic the trees by absorbing carbon dioxide from their surroundings and storing it underground. So this is there. And then there are also more complex CDR technologies like enhanced rock weathering. Okay, so this enhanced rock weathering will help in better carbon dioxide capture. How? Here the rocks are broken down chemically and the resulting rock particles can remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Okay, so this is one technology. And then other technologies like bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. This is yet another technology which capture and store carbon dioxide from burning biomass like wood. Okay, so these are all the technologies under carbon dioxide removal. So if you keenly understand this, then this carbon dioxide removal technology is actually a part of that CCUS that we discussed, that is carbon capture, utilization and storage. So these two are actually interlinked. So if you see here, enhanced rock weathering, that is farm to ocean carbon removal. How is that enhanced rock weathering is going to capture carbon dioxide and store it? See, rock particles which contains minerals, here the minerals are mined and they are finely crushed and they are transported, and these minerals in the dust form is sprayed on the fields, in the agricultural fields, and the carbon dioxide is absorbed as the mineral gets weathered. When the mineral is getting decomposed or weathering happens, chemically here it will happen. Okay, so this chemical weathering involves carbon dioxide capture, and that is how carbon dioxide is captured here, and later those minerals are washed into rivers and oceans and thus storing carbon dioxide, and they are stored in the oceans. So this is how it happens. Okay, so here it is captured and it is stored. Again, a CCS technology. Next is bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. This is yet another technology under carbon dioxide removal technologies, right? So here you have trees which actually captures carbon dioxide through the process of photosynthesis. But then when these biomass, that is trees, which is residues or waste, which has become residues or waste, they can be converted into energy, that is bioenergy conversion, and that energy can be utilized for many purposes like industry, power, transportation and heating purposes for buildings. Okay, so this energy part is done here, but again the carbon dioxide is captured, transported and storage. So this is yet another technology, that is bioenergy technology. Okay, which involves carbon capture and storage. So this is what we need to understand about the unabated coal and then the technologies involved to capture carbon dioxide. Now let us get into the details of the 8 steps suggested by the global stocktake text. Okay, so these 8 steps are under this global stocktake text. Okay, so the first one here is tripling renewable energy capacity globally and doubling global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by the year 2030. So they are aiming to triple renewable energy and double the average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements. Okay, let us see the specific values for it in the upcoming slides, but here an overview. Okay, then accelerating efforts towards phase down of unabated coal power. So here again see unabated coal power is here. Okay, so we need to phase down unabated coal power, and then accelerating efforts globally towards net zero emission energy system. So we are moving towards net zero energy systems well before or by around mid-century, that is 2050. India has this target for the year 2070. India will become net zero by the year 2070. This is the target, this is the ambition that we have. Okay, and then this will be done by utilizing zero or low carbon fuel. Okay, 3 steps done. What is the 4th step? Accelerating zero and low emission technologies. Okay, so we must have to accelerate using these technologies like renewables, nuclear energy and abatement and removal technologies that we discussed, that is CCS and CDR. Okay, and then it includes carbon capture, utilization and storage, and then low carbon hydrogen production. Okay, and why are we accelerating such low emission technologies? This is to enhance efforts towards substitution of those unabated fossil fuels where technology was not used to control carbon dioxide emission. Okay, next is transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly and equitable manner. This is important. We are going to transition away from fossil fuels, that is our goal, but then it has to be done in a just, orderly and equitable manner. What does it mean? It means that we cannot transition quickly, we cannot transition just like that without any plan. So it has to be just and in an orderly and equitable manner so that every other country is able to adopt this. Okay, so that is what is important, thus accelerating actions in this critical decade. So we have to take many steps in this particular decade, then only we can achieve net zero by 2050. So this is the 5th step that has been suggested. What are the 6th, 7th and 8th steps? So accelerating and substantially reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, so we are giving utmost importance to carbon dioxide emissions here, but then there are many other potential greenhouse gases which are causing climate change and global warming. So we are not giving importance to other greenhouse gases. So here particularly methane emission has to be reduced. That is what the focus here. Okay, so methane emissions has to be reduced globally by the year 2030. Okay, next, accelerating emission reductions from road transportation. Okay, how? Through a range of steps like including development of infrastructure and rapid deployment of zero and low emission vehicles. Okay, here you can integrate the steps that India has taken, like BS4 we have, sorry, BS6. Okay, Bharat Stage 6, this you can integrate here. Okay, next, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. That is also important, which will encourage wasteful consumption and do not address energy poverty. So if we are going to enhance this fossil fuel subsidies which are inefficient, then it will lead to wasteful consumption and it will not address energy poverty or just transition. So this has to be done as soon as possible. That is phasing out the inefficient fossil fuel subsidy. It has to be done as soon as possible. So these are the 8 steps suggested by the global stocktake text. What else do we have to understand about this text? The 5th iteration of the text, which was adopted in COP28, it actually maintains continuity with the COP26, which happened in Glasgow in the year 2021. Okay, and it balances global aspiration for countries like India with diverse energy needs. That is because India argues that it needs to continue using coal to meet its developmental needs. Okay, so we cannot transition from fossil fuels to other cleaner sources in a faster manner. We need time to transition. Okay, so India said that we will be continuing to use this coal to meet its developmental needs, and then it also emphasized the importance of adhering to the nationally determined contributions, which comes under the Paris Agreement. Okay, so India has many nationally determined contributions that we have to improve our renewable energy sector and other things. Okay, so we are giving utmost importance to it, but then we will need time. We will be using coal until we reach that time. Okay, so that is what India has said, and this 5th iteration of this global stocktake is actually in line with this. It is supporting this. Okay, next, nearly 200 countries agreed to the transition away from fossil fuel in energy systems in this COP28. So they have accepted this, and then this is important. Developing and poor countries are expressing dissatisfaction with the latest draft of global stocktake at COP28, calling for significant changes. So what are all the concerns of these developing and poor countries? Let us understand that in the next slide. That is to do with the methane emission. Okay, so we already saw that one of the steps is to control or reduce non-CO2 emission. Their non-CO2 emission that they are mentioning is particular focus is given to methane emissions. Okay, but then they have not set any particular target for it. That is because of this concern. Let us understand that. So several countries including India are extremely opposed to any mandate to cut methane emissions. Okay, so there should not be any mandatory targets to cut methane emission. That is because methane is one of the major sources happens to be, the major source of methane happens to be agriculture and livestock. Okay, so agriculture and livestock contributes to maximum methane emission, but then many countries, developing and poor countries or even underdeveloped countries are dependent on agriculture and livestock production, so they cannot go for controlling it. Okay, so cutting methane emissions could involve tweaking agriculture patterns, which could be extremely sensitive in a country like India, okay, or many other poor countries. Okay, so possibly in difference to the concerns of such countries, the agreement does not mention any target for methane emission cut for the year 2030. Okay, so they generally said that there will be reduction in methane emission, but then they did not set any particular target. Okay, although a group of about 100 countries had made a voluntary commitment in Glasgow conference COP26, okay, in the year 2021. What have they concluded here? What was the voluntary commitment here? To reduce their methane emission by 30% by the year 2030. Okay, and this pledge is called as Global Methane Pledge. So is India a part of this Global Methane Pledge? No, India is not a part of the Global Methane Pledge. All these details we must have to understand, and this was the concern of several countries. The next thing that we are going to see is, now we have come to the end of the global stock take text that we were discussing. The next thing that happened in COP28 was Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge. This was actually one of the steps under the global stock take, but then it is given separately. So the pledge stipulates that signatory commitment, the member countries commit to work together to triple the world's installed renewable energy generation capacity to at least 11,000 gigawatt by 2030, and to collectively double the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements from 2% to over 4% every year until 2030. So here it is doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvements, and here it is tripling the installed capacity of renewable energy. Okay, and then we have Global Cooling Pledge for COP28. What is this Global Cooling Pledge? It includes 66 national government signatories who are committed to working towards reducing cooling related emissions. Okay, so this cooling sector contributes to a lot of energy consumption. Okay, so it has to be controlled. So to reduce cooling sector related emissions across all sectors by at least 68% globally, and it is relative to 2020 levels by the year 2050. So the target is to reduce it by 68% by the year 2050, and then the base year is 2022 levels here. Okay, so this is what we need to understand. What else, what other outcomes were there from COP28? Declaration to triple nuclear energy. We there in one of the steps saw that we must have to improve technologies like renewables, nuclear energy and carbon capture technologies. But then there is a particular declaration to triple nuclear energy here. It is a separate declaration. So the declaration aims to triple global nuclear energy capacity by the year 2050, and it was endorsed by 22 national governments, and the declaration calls for support from shareholders of international financial institutions. So international financial institutions support is sought here. Okay. Next, Powering Past Coal Alliance. This is yet another alliance or grouping. What is it about? So this PPCA is a coalition of national and subnational governments and also businesses and organizations who are working together to advance the transition from unabated coal power generation to clean energy, which we know. Okay, and then this PPCA at COP28, it is a coalition which is already existing even before COP28, and in this COP28 this coalition welcomed new national and subnational governments and called for cleaner energy alternatives. So this was done in Conference of Parties 28. What were the other outcomes? Climate finance. This was discussed. Okay, so what about climate finance? The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It is at another conference, and in this conference they have estimated that the wealthy nations owe developing countries 500 billion US dollars in 2025 under a new goal. What is that? New collective quantified goal for climate finance. Okay, and this new collective quantified goal was confirmed by developed countries under the Paris Agreement itself, 2015 itself. Okay, and this includes, this $500 billion includes $250 billion for mitigation, $100 billion for adaptation, and $150 billion for loss and damage. Okay, and then the figure is expected to increase to 1.55 trillion US dollars by the year 2030. So this is the aim. Okay, this was the estimates given by United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. But what is the actual situation? Okay, what is the actual status? The current climate finance goal of $100 billion US dollars per year has not been met. Okay, and developing countries are facing debt stress. So this current goal has not been met. And experts call for reform of global financial architecture to address structural issues and promote sustainable development. Okay, so this is about the global finance. Next we have global goal on adaptation, yet another adaptation related goal. What is it? The draft text on global goal on adaptation was introduced in COP 28, and then it was established under the Paris Agreement to enhance climate change adaptation by increasing awareness of and also increasing the fund towards the country's adaptation needs in the context of 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius goal of Paris Agreement. So this global goal on adaptation is directly related to the Paris Agreement, and then the draft text which was drafted in the COP 28 addresses critical issues, 3 critical issues. What are they? One is climate induced water scarcity reduction. Next is climate resilient food and agriculture production. Another is strengthening resilience against climate related health impacts. So here they are focusing on climate related resilience. Okay, that is what is adaptation, right? We are getting adapted to the climate change situations. Okay, so that is what adaptation is. That is global goal on adaptation. Next, coal transition accelerator. This was yet another outcome of COP 28. So here the France, in collaboration with various countries and organizations, introduced global coal transition accelerator. What is it? Its objective is to include knowledge sharing, policy design, and financial support to facilitate just transition from coal to clean energy. And then the initiative aims to leverage best practices and lessons learned for effective coal transition. So here their best practices and their lesson learned for coal transition policies will be shared between the countries. Okay, so it was initiated by France. This is important. Next is Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership. What is this CHAMP? Okay, Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership for Climate Action. It is here a total of 65 national governments signed this CHAMP commitment. Okay, why? To enhance their cooperation with subnational governments. That is why it is called as multi-level partnership. So here the national governments are going to collaborate with the subnational governments, where in planning, financing, implementation, and monitoring of climate strategies. Okay, so this was an outcome of COP 28. Next, we have certain initiatives by India. India has taken 2 initiatives in COP 28. Let us understand that. Global River Cities Alliance. This was initiated by India. So it was led by National Mission for Clean Ganga under Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, and this alliance is a unique alliance covering 275 plus global river cities in 11 countries. What are all the 11 countries involved here? It is Egypt, Netherlands, Denmark, Ghana, Australia, Bhutan, Cambodia, Japan, and there are river cities in the country. I mean in Netherlands, in Hague, Netherlands, Adelaide from Australia, and Szolnok of Hungary. Oh, okay. So these are all the 11 countries which is forming this alliance, which is led by India, that is Global River Cities Alliance. And then this alliance highlight India's role in sustainable river-centric development and climate resilience, and this alliance platform will facilitate knowledge exchange, river city twinning, and dissemination of best practices. Okay. Next, another initiative by India, that is Green Credit Initiative. Okay. It was done to create, this initiative is to create participatory global platform for exchange of innovative environmental program and instruments. Okay. Here, two main priorities of this initiative are water conservation and afforestation. So, for water conservation and afforestation, green credit will be given. That is what the initiative is. Okay. So, it is for exchange of innovative environmental programs and instruments. Okay. So, the main purpose of this initiative is to boost voluntary environment activities like tree plantation, water conservation, sustainable agriculture, and waste management. And these will be done by incentivizing it for big corporations and private companies. So these big corporations and private companies can do this under their corporate social responsibilities. Okay, bringing about a change in the climate issues faced by the country. Okay, so this is what we need to know here. I hope you understood it very clearly. What are all the outcomes of this COP28? Okay, so now let us get into another news article. The topic that we are going to discuss now is Climate Change Performance Index 2024. Let us get into the details of this particular index. India secured 7th position in the recently released Climate Change Performance Index 2024. Okay, and then what is this index? It is published annually since 2005, and it is an independent monitoring tool for tracking countries' climate protection performance. Okay, and it is published by German Watch, that is an organization, and then there are two other organizations which are working together to publish this Climate Change Performance Index. What are they? One is the New Climate Institute and the other is Climate Action Network International. Okay, so it indicates a climate mitigation efforts of 63 countries. So this index indicates a climate mitigation efforts of 63 countries and EU, that is European Union, which collectively account for 90% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So these 63 countries and European Union accounts for 90% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and they are going to be ranked here. Okay. Now this performance index, that is Climate Change Performance Index, has certain metrics using which they are assessed. Okay, so the CCPI evaluates countries across 4 key categories. What are the categories here? One is greenhouse gas emission, which has been given 40% weightage. Next is renewable energy, which is given 20% weightage, and energy use and climate policy are other 2 categories, which is given 20% weightage each. Okay, so here this CCPI 24, what are all the outcomes of this particular index for this year? So no country performed well enough in all index categories to achieve an overall very high rating. So none of the countries has achieved that very high rating. Thus the first 3 overall positions therefore remain empty. So first 3 positions are empty. So the 4th, 5th and 6th positions are occupied by countries like Denmark, Estonia and Philippines. So Denmark 4th, Estonia 5th and Philippines 6th position. And then India comes in the 7th position. So very high, you cannot find very high anywhere, but then high positions are occupied by countries over here. India also is in the high position, and here Philippines. Okay, and then there are other countries who are performing in medium, low, very low and other categories. Okay, next is India's ranking in CCPI 24. Let us understand that we already saw that India has secured 7th position in this climate change performance index for the year 2024, thus exhibiting a stride forward from the 8th spot in CCPI 23. So there has been an increase in the performance. Okay, earlier we were in the 8th position, now we have got the 7th position. Okay, interestingly, due to absence of countries in the first 3 spots, India effectively stands 4th in the global climate performance. Obviously, right, when first 3 positions are not occupied by any of the countries, we saw the 4th position was for Denmark, 5th for Estonia, and the 6th for Philippines, and then comes India. Okay, so effectively India is in the 4th position. And India's score and ranking in the key categories, this is also important. We saw that there are 4 categories under this CCPI, and what is India's ranking under all these categories, that we have to understand. First, let us understand the first 2 categories, that is greenhouse gas emission and energy use. Okay, so in this, India ranked 9th position in greenhouse gas emission and 10th position in energy use among the assessed countries, and this is largely attributed to India's low per capita energy use. Okay, that is why we are performing well here. And also in the per capita greenhouse category, okay, greenhouse gas category, the country is on the track to meet the benchmark of well below 2 degrees Celsius, that is the Paris Agreement's benchmark. Next, under other 2 categories, that is climate policy and renewable energy, India is performing moderately. It is not performing in high categories. Okay, that is because India secured the 10th spot in climate policy, showcasing moderate progress compared to its performance in the previous assessment. Okay, and then when it comes to renewable energy, India's performance showed a more moderate rank, standing at 37th, barely remaining within the high performance category. So it is not even in the high performance category here. And then this position marks a decline from the 24th spot in the previous year's assessment. Okay, and then the report also emphasizes India's reliance on coal, oil and gas to meet its energy levels. Despite efforts to promote renewable energy, India is taking efforts to promote its renewable energy, but then we are dependent on, or we are we are heavily focused, heavily dependent on coal, oil and gas for meeting our energy needs. Okay, and this reliance contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions and severe air pollution in the cities. So that is why our performance is moderate here in the renewable energy category. Okay, and this is because of the climate policy that we have, and that is the reason why even here the progress is moderate. Now we have to comparatively analyze India's position with other countries. Okay, so what is the global trend here? The CCPI report highlight a concerning trend. What was the concerning trend here? Despite urgency to decarbonize, global greenhouse gas emissions have increased in 2022, with atmospheric carbon dioxide levels soaring 50% higher than the pre-industrial levels. Okay, and then the G20 performance, this is also important among G20 countries, where India lies and where other countries lie. Okay, so G20 performance with India in the 7th position and Germany in 14th position and European Union in 16th position. Only 3 G20 countries or regions are among the high performance countries in 2024 index. Okay, and then the G20 members account for more than 75% of the world's greenhouse gas emission. This is also important. Okay, so there are certain developed countries like United States, United Kingdom and Italy. They have showcased poor performance when compared to other countries. Okay, in this COP 2024, and this is in comparison with the CCPI 2023. Okay, reflecting a lack of substantial progress in countering climate change. Okay, so this is what we need to understand with respect to this particular news article. Okay, I hope you found the session to be very useful and informative. We have come to end of today's session. Thank you.